What is going on? My name is Michael Hacker of the Hacker Outdoors podcast. On today's show, Joey and I hit on a number of topics from snowboarding, Colorado being Never Never Land, Florida Man strikes again, and we go down the Utah monolith rabbit hole and speak of some other strange sights across America. I hope you enjoy as much as we enjoyed recording, and without further ado, here we go. Okay. Joe, thanks for joining us, man.
Anytime.
Always a pleasure having you back on. Yeah, it's the goal is to have you back every week. I love chatting with you and kind of touching base on everything that's going on in the world. I wanted to jump in first and talk a little bit about last week's show. We talked a little bit about homing pigeon or carrier pigeon. Those are domestic pigeons, also derived from the wild rock dove. But there definitely does seem to be a difference between, what is extinct and what isn't. I believe the carrier pigeon is actually the extinct one, but I might be wrong on that. So I'm not at all a proper birding person quite yet. But the English carrier pigeon is saying that it is a show pigeon. It is not a modern homing pigeon. So there's definitely a difference there. And, I'm not going to go much deeper than that. So
we do not claim to be bird experts.
No, not at all. And it's nice. I'm back in my office. So the wife finished work a little bit early today. And I'm able to reclaim my office for a little while rather than being downstairs. So I like this. I got my big monitor going. Got my, big webcam going. So hopefully things look a little bit better, sound a little bit better, and are good to go.
Yeah, I'm working on that. This is my fishing room. It's not quite done yet. Still got a lot to do, but it's got all my gear.
Is that your Sims?
Oh, that's my old Sims from
Old
Sims. There we go. That's my old Sims from back when I had my very first shop. So you have one of those. What is that?
Yeah, that's the same one I have. The FS 600.
That's my daughter. That's 18, 19 years old.
I actually recently gave mine to Jimmy and Ryan, so I had two old boards that I gave to them, at least something for them to learn on before they go out and actually have their parents spend a significant chunk of change on them. And so they have them both, and I told them when they're done with it, I want it back because I want to hang it downstairs in the workroom.
Yeah, I mean, it's for 20 years old, it still works absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, I enjoyed riding it. I rode it up until 2 seasons ago, I think.
I rode that one, not that exact one, but that same model and another model of the Sims in that year, in that season out in Colorado. And I had over 100 days on them, beat it to hell. And it was great. Everything.
Yeah.
It was amazing. They made quality boards back in the day.
Yeah,
I rode for 4 years, but what do I have now? I have a Forum. Like 2 years old. Is it a Forum? I think it's a Forum. I forget what it is, but can't ride anymore.
I got a nice Rossi board. I got 2 seasons ago, and at the end of 2 seasons ago, and rode it all last season. It's a shorter board, a heck of a lot more control, but the technology has changed so drastically. I mean, the conditions here in the New Jersey is just so icy that like traditional boards, they just couldn't stick sometimes. You're coming around these turns and just skid out and fall. I broke my wrist. I think we were talking about it like twice snowboarding. I got ran over by some woman while I was teaching someone how to snowboard. And then one time I just, dude, she was a 2-planker. That's what we call skiers.
2-plankers.
She went, I don't know how the heck this happened. And I was teaching someone who was holding their hands and showing them how to snowboard. And one ski went under my board. The other ski went over the board, and we both tumbled down the mountain together. And that was the last time I broke my wrist. And that happens quite frequently, unfortunately, with 2-plankers. When I lived out west, I remember I thought everybody was messing with me, but they kept saying people fall off the lift all the time. I'm like, yeah, no, there's no way. Yeah. Literally, opening day, within 20 minutes of the lift spinning, somebody fell off the lift. Like, I couldn't believe it. How does that happen?
20 minutes in the opening day, fell off I can't tell you. It blew my mind. And it happened quite frequently, which was another thing that was mind-blowing to me, that it happens so much, And another thing we get was the people coming there who weren't super advanced skiers or snowboarders, and glades, tree runs. There's certain tree runs out there that are tree runs, but what these people would do, like they would just ride off the side of the trail in the woods that weren't necessarily tree runs and just hit trees. Like it was crazy to see. It was nuts because it was parents and kids like just going full speed into trees.
It makes you wonder, man. It really makes you wonder. Like, I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination. I've been snowboarding since I think senior year of high school. Yeah, but not as frequently. Like I had a few years that I didn't go. I couldn't afford a pass, and just kind of fell out of touch with people that were snowboarding, so I wasn't going myself. Brian wasn't snowboarding for a bit, but when you went out to Colorado, you were in Breck, right?
Right. Yep. And that was. Think about this. 2003 season. 2002.
I think it's 2002.
2002. Yes. Yeah. That's
so
right.
I went to Breck. I went the following year. I was there in the summer of 2003. So yeah, you had just left. I was just passing through, and I stayed with your old crazy friends out there, and I couldn't imagine what it must be like in the.
There was quite some characters out there at the time. I heard it's changed a lot, which I heard with the weed industry, it's kind of changed the town a little bit. How true that is, I don't know. But when I lived out there, it was beautiful because Breckenridge is one of the places that's actually was a town before it was a ski destination. So it was an old mining town back in the day. A lot of these resorts, there was nothing there before, and they just built it up. But Breckenridge was actually an old mining town. One of the bars we used to go to, I forget the name of it, used to be a brothel. So, you could still see where all the rooms were for the working women. But what the bar did, they put like different games in there. Like one had like a pool table and one had, pinball or whatever. It was really cool. It was a cool town. It was really fun living out there.
I gotta be honest. I wrote a book, and hopefully one of these days it'll get published. Been trying to hawk it all over the place, trying to get it out there. And it's based loosely upon my travels, but I call Breckenridge the kind of never land. Well, Colorado in general, I call never land, but Breck for me was just. I couldn't take it. It was too much. Like I couldn't wait to leave Breck. And we were there in the middle of summer. And to be completely honest,
it's probably swamped that time of year.
Yeah, but it's also like the type of people that we were running into compared to. We had come from Telluride. Telluride is absolutely stunning, and we were camping, and then we went to live into this. We were staying with your former friends out there in their cabin, and it was overwhelming. It was kind of like coming out of the desert, and after camping for a few weeks and going right into Sin City and going into Vegas and just being inundated with just all this noise and chaos, and you're just like, I can't take this. I've been in the wild for too long. Like I don't want to deal with it.
The best part is, there's one stoplight in the town, maybe two. I used to only try to snow. I would really only ride during the weekdays because it was just dead. Nobody was there. It was absolutely phenomenally just gorgeous and quiet. But on the weekends, I think on the holiday weekend one time, they were approaching like 90-some thousand people on the mountain. Now, it's a huge, vast space, so it's not jam-packed like you would think, but
right.
It would get packed on holiday weekends in there. I can imagine the summer out there is just as crazy.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting. I mean, Telluride was a little bit different.
Breaking news just came in. Donald Trump pardoned General Flynn.
Oh, look at that. Breaking news.
I had to tell you that, Mike. It just flashed on my screen.
Hey, no, I appreciate it. We'll do a little segue there. I would love to make it out west to snowboard. I never had. I almost worked for a company before I started working at my travel company, my first job after college, for a company that strictly did skiing and snowboarding trips out west. And, that would have been awesome because in the travel industry, they call them FAM trips or familiarization trips, where they send you to these places so that you get to know them, so that you can truly talk about them and upsell them or whatever it is you're doing. And, it was very interesting, but unfortunately that fell through, and I think the company is now defunct because, of course, the internet takes over everything, right?
The internet takes everything. Well, the year I lived out there, that winter was the best snow ice they had ever. It's been broken since then, but by Thanksgiving, so by this time when I lived out there, Vail was 100% open. All the back rolls, everything.
Oh,
It got
wow.
to the point that 10 inches of snow, 12 inches of snow, we were like, that's, we're not going out today. Like, I mean, we were getting dumped on. There was one day I was one of the guys that lived out there, Andrew, we called him Spanky. Andrew and I were riding up in the far reaches of Breckenridge, and we were in waist to chest deep powder. I mean, it was insane how deep the snow was that year, how quick and how fast it came. And I think 2 years later, that record was broken. You probably remember they had on the news, like National Guard had to be sent in out there.
Yeah.
It was nuts. That Lincoln Tunnel, I think it's Lincoln Tunnel you go through from Denver to go up there, was constantly closed down just because of the amount of snow we were getting. It was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
See, I wouldn't even know what that would be like. I've done a couple trips here on the East Coast. I've done, but never have I seen powder like that. And it's, mostly artificial snow. I mean, Jay's Peak, right? I think is the snowiest place.
They get over 300 inches a year. I went up there before I hurt my knee, so we're talking like 6 years ago. We were up there. We went up before Thanksgiving. I actually think it was like the 10th of November. Remember when I stopped and saw you guys?
Yeah.
We ended up getting like 2 feet of fresh snow, and it was phenomenal. Dry powder, beautiful snow. But the only difference is the second day we were there, it was negative 30 degrees with the wind whipping. I mean, it was so cold. It was insane.
Well, that's what it is, right? And you have those days. Brian and I love going here to Mountain Creek. We were talking about it a little bit last week, right? That the local mountain here in Jersey that we go to, and you go up in the late season, early spring before literally there's no snow left, and you're snowboarding down, and it's my favorite because you're wearing just a sweatshirt, you're wearing your snow pants, and you feel free. You feel like you can kind of do everything, and you're dodging these massive craters in the middle of the snow that have just already melted, and there's all sorts of rocks and gravel and everything popping through. So but you go in the middle of winter. I mean, we would do night season, right? We go at nighttime and hit some night runs, and the wind would be howling, and you're like, man, it is negative right now, and this is not comfortable. You got the hand warmers going and everything like that. Whereas you would tell me out west, you guys, you snowboarding during the day and you're pretty comfortable.
We would have problems, the dry air, people always say. We would have people come in from town and come into town and, go out at nighttime. It's, a hoodie and jeans because it felt nice. But meanwhile, it was like in the teens. It was crazy. I mean, with that snowpack, on a sunny day, it's definitely a different type of cold, much more dry. And it doesn't feel as cold. I think the snowpack helps that. Most days it'd be like 28, 24, bluebird days, the sun shining off the snow. It was just beautiful. Now, don't get me wrong. There was a couple of days, like when storms would come in, and they would have to shut down the lifts from mid-mountain up. And when these huge snowstorms would come in and just dump snow and the wind was crazy. But the next day, it would dump a foot, 2 feet of snow overnight. Wake up the next morning, bluebird day, like fresh snow, blue skies.
See, it's funny.
They call Summit County the Winter's Playground. I think it's the Winter's Playground they call it, or something like that. But for that reason, just you got Vail there, Breck there, Copper, A Basin, Keystone. I'm sure I'm leaving stuff out, and just
I'm sure
it dumps.
Yeah, it's as we're talking this, a buddy of mine's just texting me. He's like, bro, what are you doing for the winter here? You getting a night pass at Creek? I'm like, I was literally just talking about this with my cousin. But this guy bought I forget what they call it, but it's a season pass that's good at like a bunch of different mountains up in like Vermont and whatnot. And he bought it last year, but they shut everything down so early because of COVID that like he was out probably a good handful of trips.
Yeah.
So he was trying to figure out what was going on with that. And I guess he's not doing it. And that's why he's saying that he's like, basically he gets discounted ski with a friend tickets for the main season. And he's going to let me know when they open up. So that's cool. I mean, if we can do something like that.
I would be worried about getting a season pass because like you said, if they close it completely down, or then if they do the thing where it's, you said they're going to limit the number of people on there. So it's going to be like a waiting game. You could get up there and they could have a limit on the mountain.
Yeah.
You could sit there for 4 or 5 hours. And who's to say that people are going to leave,
Right. You don't know that. Yeah. I don't know, man. I'm laughing. My camera outside keeps triggering that damn squirrel that we feed. We've aptly named him Albert. He keeps coming up to the back steps and trying to look inside to get some food. So he's triggering the camera in front of me. I keep getting this pop up. And
you remind me of you and your pet squirrels remind me. I dated a girl in high school until I was probably like 20, and she was Native American, and her grandmother lived in Cherokee, off of Cherokee down in North Carolina, and they had pet squirrels and pet foxes, and the fox would actually come up and eat from her hand. That's going to be here with the squirrel.
I don't know, man. The squirrel will eat out of my hand, but we kind of pumped the brakes a little bit on that. Donna sent me this article about Johnny Rotten. So Johnny Rotten suffers flea bite to his quote unquote sex pistol following a squirrel rescue. So he had been feeding these squirrels that he had rescued out of his hands, and it turns out that he got fleas in his nether regions. And I'm like, Donna sent to me, she's like, how about we don't feed them out of our hands anymore? We can put food down for them. We get, we went out and we got some nuts for them. We leave them on the back steps, but we're not feeding them out of our hands anymore because that's the last thing that we want.
I love Johnny Rotten. I mean, he seems like a crazy guy, but I have a feeling squirrels he were feeding were probably like London squirrels or something with fleas. I mean, Ranger chases squirrels all the time and gets close to them, and he's never got fleas. So who really knows where Mr. Rotten got those fleas from?
Yeah, I guess you're right. But there is, I was laughing. Donna goes, it's funny. Everywhere I go, April, my sister calls me. She calls me St. Francis, right, or Dr. Doolittle, and it's everywhere I go and anywhere I've ever gone. Like somehow, some sort of animal finds me, and we take care of it for the time that I'm there. Like Donna brought up the time I was in Egypt, and I sent her a picture we were just outside the Great Pyramids at Giza and sat down at a hookah bar to get some tea and then get out of the sun for a little while. And this like 2 cats jump up on the table that out of nowhere and just sit down next to me. And one of my colleagues took a picture of me and was like, this is ridiculous. They're like, you're in Egypt, they revere the cat as the guardians of the underworld, right? I believe is what it is. And it's like,
yeah,
here it is. It's coming. Yeah, it's coming next to you and it's, hanging out with you. So, yeah. So
I'm the same, like dogs and cats just attract to me. And people call me Dr. Doolittle too, because of the way I'm dogs just take to me, and cats too. It's crazy. It must run in the blood. I mean, I love animals. Squirrels. I mean, they don't bother me. Ranger hates squirrels. They're his arch enemy. That's the only animal he'll chase after are squirrels. I mean, deer. We have so many deer here by my house. I saw that deer again last night. Yeah, the piebald again. Just it was in my backyard. I'll take him out at nighttime, and Ranger just will get within 5 feet of them and act like they're not even there. But a squirrel comes by, he's gone.
Toby, my Doberman, when he was alive, he used to, he was very defensive in general regarding wild animals, but he hated the squirrels. So I never really, I don't know, like there's this whole secret side of the world that you just never pay attention to. And, being home because of COVID and other reasons, I guess you just kind of tend to look outside more often or hang out outside, and you realize that there's a heck of a lot more animals than you ever paid attention to. And it's like, I started watching these squirrels, and this one squirrel must have escaped death somehow. So he's missing part of his tail. and he's the
Jeez.
one, yeah, he's the one we call Albert, but he's an absolute goofball. Like he'll run across the yard and like pounce on the other squirrels, and they'll roll around, and we call it pickle jumping because that's what Finnegan, my cat, does, where they like basically jump straight up in the air and like backwards 10 feet, and you're like, how did you just do that? But the squirrel does this, and it's just they're giant goofballs. So I will not be feeding them out of my hands anymore. I think we'll put a pause to that. I'll continue to feed them, and I feed the birds.
Back to the feeding on the hand thing. Back when I was working, we did a lot of plumbing and AC work at this apartment complex in Dundalk, more of a city type of area, not a rural area, more urban. And one of the ladies who worked in the office had pet squirrels outside, probably 30. She fed on a daily basis, and she would like let them crawl off her arms. It was insane. But these squirrels, she fed them so much. I mean, they were just like the size of bunnies almost. It was crazy. Yeah, it was definitely to the point of overfeeding and
they're well fed because they steal the bird seed as well. And we were hoping that if we started giving them nuts on the patio, that they would leave the bird seed alone and allow the birds that we feed.
Sense.
But they still attack the bird feeder. There's no hope. Yeah, they're fat. They're ridiculous. They're getting up there in size.
Well, so back in high school too, where I went to high school, good old Towson Catholic, we had I think there were oak trees on the one side of the building and a huge squirrel population. And let me tell you how much enjoyment those squirrels brought me in many of boring classes to watch them go nuts and play. Like you said, and just it was great. You know, you could just look out the window and just watch them just going nuts and playing. But yeah, Mr. Rotten. I mean,
Mr. Rotten. There you go. That's one that kind of caught me off guard this week. I was like, wow, all right.
That's a great story you dug up.
But speaking of great stories, hopefully everyone saw this there, and I know you did. I sent it to you earlier this week, but there was a Florida man. As soon as you start a story with Florida man, you know it's going to be awesome. He wrestles his puppy from the jaws of an alligator, and I'm watching this thing, and I'm like, man, like number one, that alligator, right, is not big, but that thing will still mess you up, and that dog is tiny.
Oh, yeah.
But
I mean, that alligator was a good, probably 3.5 feet long.
Easily, yeah.
I mean, I remember when I was in elementary school, we had this guidance counselor, and he was a crazy animal enthusiast, and he had somebody bring in a baby alligator.
Yeah.
Probably little. I think it was like in the 2-foot range, and that thing was strong. I mean, that was quite impressive what that man did. And not to get hurt. I mean, the fact that he pried the jaws too. Yeah, I mean, those jaws are so strong.
Yeah. The pressure per square inch, I think, is what they go by, and they're massive. I should say their strength is massive. It looks, I used to go down to the Gold Coast and visit my grandfather when he was still with us, and Brian and I would go down probably twice a year to go check in on him and hang out down in Florida. We would do a lot of we'll call it pond fishing, but basically these ponds that are on golf courses, they lived on a golf course. So we go down there and fish them. And supposedly there were no alligators there. So Brian and I would go bass fishing. We'd have some of the most productive bass fishing you could ever imagine because nobody fishes these things. No one fishes them. And, we never saw an alligator. So one time we're leaving and I'm driving out and I'm like, what is that swimming in the water there? And it's sure enough, it's an alligator. So I call Grandpa when I get home and I'm like, hey, like we saw an alligator in your front pond there where Brian and I were fishing. He goes, oh, they're there. And I'm like, okay, food for thought, because literally 24 hours earlier, Brian had a bass on, got tangled in the weeds, and Brian went into the water to go get his fish out. So we will not be doing that next time we're here. Yeah, I'll link to that.
I mean, those alligators, there's no way. Like Scott Martin, the pro fisherman Scott Martin, he lives down in Florida, I think Clewiston area. And he'll always do like these, he calls them SMC challenges, where he'll have other famous anglers come. And it's on his YouTube channel, and they'll have like fishing competitions. And they're always out. Like one of them they were fishing in the Everglades, and the winner had to do a cannonball into the Everglades. And they did it. The losers, had to jump in, and they did it. I mean, That's not for me. Even I can't like fishing down there. I would be even. And there's canals. I would be weirded out even reaching down to grab the bass out of the water because, those gators eat bass. I mean,
Yeah.
they see a
Well,
bass on the hook. That's a free meal.
well, we saw a river otter in one of the other ponds, and it was crazy. We were fishing, and this is where I caught my PB bass. It was in this little pond, so I was like, "Man, I'm gonna get him again." And lo and behold, I did like no bite for like 20 minutes, and all of a sudden, on the far side of the pond, I see this thing swimming around. So I start to back away from the water because I'm like, "This is an alligator coming towards me."
Yeah.
But the thing pops up, and it's got a bass hanging out of its mouth, and it's this monster looking, like beautiful looking creature. And I took a video of it. I think I posted it on my Instagram. If not, I'll definitely make sure to do it. But what a cool looking thing. And it's like looking at it, it's like, you better get out of here. Like, this is my pond.
Those are one creature that I wouldn't want to mess with. I mean, that's why when I saw that video, I'm like, there's Ranger. Never fails.
Hey, Ranger.
Tomorrow's his birthday, so he thinks he can be
Oh, he could do whatever he wants then.
Yeah. So when I saw that video, I couldn't believe the dog wasn't hurt, and B, that the man opened the jaws like that. Seeing that he jumped in there too, because usually where there's a baby, there's a mama. I mean, no hesitation, he went in. I mean, he deserves an award. Only in Florida. Only in Florida.
Only in Florida, man. Only in Florida.
The
Absolutely
state where I was born.
You were. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Maybe that's what's wrong with me. I was born in Miami. Yep.
You got that wrong. Yeah. Well, speaking of outdoor stuff in states, did you see that Utah voted to make hunting and fishing a constitutional right earlier this month?
I did. I think that's awesome.
Oh man, how could it not be a constitutional right? Really, if you think about it, right? Like it's.
Well, some states have laws. I believe that, if you're hunting for subsistence, you don't have to have licenses, I believe. I think there's a few states like that. It might be, think like Alaska, the more rural states that are, out there and nobody. But 100%, I think it should be a constitutional right. I mean,
yeah, and I think that kind of goes with like clean air, clean water. I think it's you should be guaranteeing that this is not only accessible for people to do in places. I mean, you look here in New Jersey, and I get so mad. Brian and I used to drive down this road going to our old apartment, and the Passaic River's right along this road, and there was a nice little wooded section off to your right, but the left is all protected wetland, and the right I assumed was part of the protected wetland. So we'd always joke, we'd say, oh, you can park over here into the woods and you could fish right across there, and there's pike there, there's catfish, there's great bass fishing, and it's right off of this road. And I took a long way home, maybe about a month ago, and I saw that this whole section to the right of the road where we used to park our car is gone. Like it's now, like there's a major highway on the other side, but it was a good, maybe a couple hundred, if not thousands acres of property that is now it's two major roadways. It looks like they're connecting the two, and they're now putting strip malls on both sides. And you say, well, number one, in the modern world, yeah, well, you think like with everything going on in the world today, do you really need to be opening more stores? And if so, why aren't you utilizing the buildings that are already open, that are already vacant? Because there are a lot of them. You don't need to be tearing down more property to build. Now, I'm very pro-democracy. I'm very pro-capitalism. There's something here that says, like, you need to pause and say, why did the town allow this to happen? There's already tons of stores. There's already tons of commerce happening. You've got on that entire highway there, that is nothing but stores up and down it. You don't need to build anymore. You don't need to put more townhouses or condos. We have plenty of them here. And this is something that plagues New Jersey, and I'm sure plagues other places as well. I mean, I posted something on my Instagram about Costa Rica. Donna and I went back in, 2004, 2005 maybe.
Yeah, it's been a while.
And the beach that we stayed at was pristine, beautiful, untouched. There was this resort on it, and then nothing else. There was, I think, a bar, like a locals bar, all the way down, nothing else. 2 years after we went there, we wanted to see maybe we would go back. So we started doing a little bit of research, and we saw that they were building luxury condos on the beach there. And you say to yourself, once again, it's like, for what?
Right.
For what? For what purpose? Like, so that people from the United States can go down there and buy these up and then not live there and just come to visit or rent them out when people come? Like, it's just,
Well,
there has to be some sort of balance here. And I don't
right.
know what the answer is. And, I'm definitely pro development in some way, shape, or form, but you have to do so in a way that really makes sense.
So, for example, here we have the bay. I'm in Maryland, near the Chesapeake Bay,
Yeah.
and there's an area by me called White Marsh. White Marsh, in between White Marsh and I think it's like Essex and all that. It's all marsh and all wetlands and stuff like that. It was protected wetlands, and they built, just like you guys, a highway that connected the two of them through the wetlands, and they're building all this stuff on there. And they complain about pollution in the bay, which is definitely a problem. Why the hell are you doing that then?
Yeah.
And the other thing is, Baltimore, there's so many GD vacant buildings everywhere. Not even just that, around me. I mean, there's better places to build. Why did they choose to do it right there? And then they're going to add a rain tax on you in Maryland because they say pollution in the bay. Well, why do they approve building that highway through wetlands and marsh that connect to the bay? I mean, they're so close to it. I mean, once you get into the highway, the bay is there. I mean,
the almighty
why?
dollar. That's why it all comes down to the almighty dollar. You know that, and I know that. And the towns look at it as, their businesses too, right? They're looking for income from taxes and other things, and it's I don't agree with it. I think that it's frustrating. There's got to be a
Like
better
I said,
way to
there
do
was
it,
a
like you
better.
said.
I can think of 10 different. First off, they didn't need a quicker way to cut between the two because there's already a way. But I can think of 20 different better ways they could have done this.
Right.
And when they started doing that, I don't know, probably 6-7 years ago, maybe longer now. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I was just like, why?
Yeah.
You're taking this land that was once. I mean, that's what it was. It was marshes all around the bay,
Yeah.
in wetlands, and they're just.
Well, it's disheartening, man. It's
things on it
it's
in the
disheartening.
bay. Especially,
Yeah.
like you said, I was down the Potomac this past weekend, and the Potomac bite this year. The Potomac was a place you can go and catch great fish and just have a great time. But this year, the bite's been really, really off. Just not there. I mean, we went out Saturday and we were out for 7-8 hours. It's a beautiful day. Water temps were in the mid 50s. It's fall. The air temp was like 65. I mean, the bass should have been biting. I talked to 10 different guys who were out there in 10 different boats. Nobody caught any largemouth. Nobody. Like, where are they?
Yeah. Well,
it's
this kind of goes back to, we were talking about last week about the bat thing that Donna and I went to, and we were talking about, I believe they're called foundation species, right? And this,
Yep.
we're naive to think that we're not part of a greater ecosystem, and naive to think that we don't play a bigger part in the universe at large, because there are things that, we definitely interrupt on a day-to-day basis that causes this ripple effect across everything. And I don't know, like, you just look at these places and you say, all right, well, the Passaic River is not known to be a necessarily clean river, right? Like, it's known at least on the
It could be
lower.
though.
It could be, but the largest freshwater pearl ever was found in the Passaic River, or a tributary
I
to
didn't know
the
that.
river. Yeah, so it's actually owned by the Queen of England now. But
Wow.
the lower portions of the Passaic River are disgusting. That's where they used to dump Agent Orange after the war, right? And so after a rain, like, you don't want to be fishing there. But people think like, oh, well, we're so modern and we're so great with the way things are being done today that there's no, we're fine. We have to worry about other things and other pollutants. It's like, well, no, when you build houses along rivers, even inadvertently, you're probably going to be polluting. You have people that are fertilizing their lawns because everyone wants a green lawn. That gets into the rivers, the lakes, and then the ocean, and that causes all sorts of problems. You have blow off from people's garbage. I mean, there's not a day that goes by that I'm not out in front of my house picking up garbage because people's trash cans blow over and trash just floats across. If you're on a waterway, that's going to get into the water.
Like even by me, like I can't tell you how many times I'm driving and I see people just roll down their window and let their trash fly. And that all goes back into the bay. I mean, we're so close to the bay that all our storm runoff, drain runoff, that's where it goes, the bay. And I just don't understand people who can just litter so easy and not think twice and just let fly their trash out the window or, you know, wherever. Like the trash cans get knocked over. I understand that. That happens. We had a raccoon last summer and got in our trash a couple times. But you know what? The next morning, every one of my neighbors and myself are out there picking our trash up and bagging it and taking care of it. But it's crazy to me because those kind of things have effects, like you said, to the environment in the outdoors that we love. And it's sad. It's really sad to see it in the construction around these beautiful places. You know, I get it, you know, tourist dollars, whatever, but there's got to be a better way to do it, you know, to help save. Because I remember that whole building boom in Costa Rica. You know, back when I had the surf shop, we had an investor who wanted to invest to build a skate park, indoor skate park. Well, he pulled out last minute because him and his buddies had the opportunity to buy all this oceanfront property in Costa Rica to build those condos. So,
well, we looked when we were down there, we just I'll say for shits and giggles, we decided to look at places that we can buy, and we found it was a modest house, but it was on like 10, 15 acres of oceanfront property. And it was like the US equivalent of, I think it was $60,000.
Yeah.
And you couldn't touch that now down there. Like it's maddening. But you know, you have that here. And we were talking to a friend about getting property somewhere down. He's moving to South Carolina, and he said, you know, the waterfront property on the intercoastal down there has really skyrocketed over the past like 3-4 years. He's like, I wish we had moved down there. And I said, well, you know, they're not building more oceanfront property. Like it is what it is, unless you're in Dubai or whatever, where they're making islands. But like
making islands, or
right. But you have a responsibility as a person, a citizen of the world, to maintain the environment in which we live. Like, don't trash it. Don't leave it better than you found it. That's something that I always preach, especially when fishing. Like I'm always taking stuff out of trees.
You learned as a Cub, you know, when I took Cub Scouts, that was back when I was a little kid, that was the big thing. You know, if we would go camping, they would always say, leave it neater than it was when we came. You know, pick everything up, make it even better.
Maybe that's where I caught it from. I was a Cub Scout for a year before my trip got disbanded.
That's exactly where you got it from.
Yeah.
They always say that. Always say that. And that's a good thing to live by. You know, I know a lot of surfers, and I do too. If they go to the beach, they say, you know, always pick up a bag of trash with you. You know, it will help. It will help, because that's another thing. How many people litter at the beach? Oh my God, it drives me nuts. Absolutely nuts.
Well, speaking of litter, did you see that monolith discovered in remote Utah?
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Metal object. So that someone's saying that they want to find out who it is, because technically they're considering it somewhat of littering, right? And we saw this the other day. It was posted, and they're trying to understand what it is, why it's there. Of course, my first thought was aliens, right?
Aliens.
I said it to my mom. My mom goes, aliens. And I'm like, well, you don't know that, right? Like this is how those horror movies begin. There's some sort of random object, right? That's communicating. Exactly. I'm not discounting that, but they're now.
Pre-invasion.
This is the pre-invasion, yeah. But they just said something today. It was apparently someone looked back in Google Maps, and in 2016 it was still there. So it's been there for a while. I mean, was it 4 years now?
So
in the
if
desert.
You ever I fell into this strange genre of YouTube videos ever since watching the Ghost Town Living. of these, there's other people who live out in Nevada and those desertous areas who will go to these abandoned towns and abandoned mines. And there's also a subset of people who go out there, artists and stuff, and will go out in the middle of nowhere and just erect some piece of what they call art.
Art.
I always wonder
air quote art.
I always wonder if this is kind of what this is, because there's this one girl, Wonder Hussy. I watch her YouTube channel, and she was up in Oregon.
Okay.
She's from Nevada, and she went to this spot and filmed all day. And she said when she got there, she found this new art thing up there. And she posted a picture on Instagram before she posted the YouTube video. And the artist reached out to her and was like, "We don't want you posting your YouTube video. We don't not very nice what they were saying, but it was the same type of deal. They just went out there and planted something, and now they don't want anybody to know about it."
Well, that's not your right, especially if it's on.
Well, that's what she was kind of saying.
And you shouldn't have.
Public, right.
It's technically considered graffiti, or like even worse. I mean, there was that incident a couple of years ago where people were being sought after because they put graffiti on rock walls in the Southwest somewhere. I don't remember what national park it was, but like this is basically the same.
But she was saying, she goes, this. Her argument, because she did a video talking about, she's like, this is public land. This I think it was National Forest land or whatever it was called. And she was like, so I was like, screw those guys. I want to post it, but she decided not to. But listening to her talk about that, to me, I mean, it was aggravated as hell, because why do people just think they can go out to these places and erect
and do whatever they want? Right.
Yeah. Like you said,
we're public landowners, and I get that. But once again, going back to what we were just saying, you have to be a good steward of the land, of what we were left, and leave this place better than what we found it as humans. But this is a long time thing. And I was listening to the Meat Eater podcast, and I happened across something, and it was a New York Mag, November 9th article on mysteries, and I had heard about this, maybe about a decade ago, and it's called The Great 21st Century Treasure Hunt, a decade-long, sometimes maddening, occasionally deadly, brain-scrambling search for gold in the American West. So, of course, I think we all grew up with Indiana Jones. I sent you something about Indiana Jones actually today. Obsessed with it. That's great. But the writer of this, Benjamin Wallace, actually was on Meat Eater, and he was talking about this. Where is it? What's the guy's name? So basically, this guy, Justin Posey, found this treasure, supposedly, or was involved. What was it?
I'm going to look at the link while you're talking.
Yeah, I have it up. But this was interesting because basically what happened was this supposed like millionaire artistic type person hid a treasure, a vast treasure somewhere in the American West, supposedly, possibly on public land, and said, "Okay, guys, I wrote this poem. Forrest Fenn is the guy's name. This is going to tell you exactly how and where to find my treasure." But this isn't the first time this has happened. I think it's the first time it's become a spectacle, right? This guy published the poem in a book that he was then selling, which I think he donated some of the money, if I'm not mistaken, to the bookshop that it was being sold at. But Fenn hid this treasure, and it was out there for quite a while, somewhere in the wilds of the West. But you have that. I mean, you have a bunch of mysteries that happen out west, and even here.
How young was I? I guess I was like 12. We went out to Arizona, and we spent like 4 weeks out there one summer. And there was a story out in Arizona like that where a guy, I think around the turn of the century, had a huge gold claim. And this is a legitimate story. And he left like maps for his family to find the gold claim. I don't think it's been found yet. I forget the guy's name, but there's still people looking for it. There's a lot of that out there. Like watching those, ghost town living, when he goes back in those mines, and these guys, there's still gold in those mines. They'll point it out. I forget what this stuff's called.
The veins.
The type of rock where there's silver and gold in it. And it's everywhere out there. you know, it's still there. It's just, you know, I would love
Yeah.
to do that kind of stuff.
Well, you're talking about the Lost Dutchman's gold mine, right? Down in the Superstitions, down by Phoenix. Yeah.
Yes.
So that, I mean, when Donna and I were in Arizona, we've been to Arizona twice now. I've been 3 times in that area, and you see the Superstition Mountains in person, and you just say, "Holy cow, man!" Like that is a whole lot of property, and people have died looking for this. But it's one of those great American mysteries that, just like this monolith out in Utah, like
Yeah.
who knows what it is? It may be something that, someone had created some sort of geocache or some sort of something to be something to be solved, right? Like, and it's very reminiscent of, you ever hear down at Langley, right? Langley, Virginia, where the CIA headquarters is, there's a thing called Cryptos.
Yes.
You ever hear Cryptos?
Yes.
It's Jim Sanborn created this kind of, I guess, call it an artistic overlay, but it's a crypto, basically, codec that needs to be solved. And apparently right now it's one of the most famous unsolved codes in the world, but they're everywhere. I mean, you look at the world around us, it's everywhere. I mean, this goes back to even, pre-modern history. When we were out west, we went to Three Rivers in New Mexico, and there was just all these petroglyphs everywhere. There's stuff there that you would look at and you'd say, what the heck is this, man?
Yes.
Like, there's some interesting things out here, like things that look like crosses and things that look like UFOs and things that look like dinosaurs.
When we went to Arizona, what was it? Is it Montezuma State Park that has the cave drawings? And they built, the Native Americans built their homes up in the cliffs. Have you ever seen that place? Yeah. There's paintings in there like that where there's crosses and just stuff that you're like, where did this come from? It's crazy to see. In another place in Mexico, I would have to go upstairs and get out of my book to tell you. I got to get that so I can tell you the name.
No, it's okay. You're talking about Montezuma Castle National Monument. So we did not make it there. Yes. Catherine's been there. My sister Catherine.
That place is amazing.
She said it is the same thing. Yeah, man. Like, that's really cool. We'll link to that in the show notes, because that, if you're in the area down there, I'm sorry to say I didn't make it, but petroglyphs are super interesting. Like, you think of
upstairs about this one thing, because this pertains to it. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, of course. And I'll just continue. So, you look at the way petroglyphs have been created over the years and where they are. And actually, Arizona is a prime example of this. Like, out in the middle of the desert, I believe it's Petrified National Forest. There's something carved in one of the rocks or one of the petrified logs that looks like a ship. And it's like, well, who carved a ship in the middle of the desert? So there's definitely a lot of mysteries that go on, especially here in the United States. One of my favorite TV shows from a while ago was the author of The Hooked X. You ever watch America Unearthed, Joe?
I did, yes. I used to love that show.
Yeah, it was very. I don't even think it's still on, because it had been off the air for a while, right? It was on a History Channel, and then I think it switched over to the Travel Channel. But I was talking about the Petroglyph National Forest, how they had the petroglyphs of or drawings, basically, of ships in the middle of the desert, in the middle of Arizona. And
I've seen that.
I don't know if it was Minoan ships or if it was Viking ships, but it was definitely something that was strange. So what are you looking at over there? Your photo album?
So we went to Mexico, and I gotta find the name of the place. So when you go to Mexico, you go to Cancun, or we weren't in Cancun. We stayed at the more fancier place that's on the Caribbean with the bluer water. It's not Cozumel. You've stayed there before. It's outside Cancun.
The Riviera Maya.
Yes. So when you go to Cancun, people go to the old Mayan temples and everything. There's a real famous one that everybody goes to where you can climb the old Mayan temples. Well, we went to this one. I can't find the name. I left the brochure upstairs, even though I went to go grab it. That the Mayan ruins are over 10 square miles, and they haven't even unearthed, they said, like 1% of it. And they have so far they've unearthed 3 different of those sacrificial towers you can go up onto. and it's one of the last ones you can still climb, the real big one. But on the tour, you go to an underwater cave. I think it's called Snow, right? Where the water down there is real crystal blue, and you can swim, and that's where they believed you would go when you died.
Yeah.
They had cave drawings in there. I got to find the brochure. I'll bring it up next podcast. So it's upstairs. They had cave drawings in there, the same thing with crosses and UFO things. And these were the mines. I mean, this was BC, I believe. Yeah. Right after Christ. I think it was just after. It's either BC, late BC or early 80s. And the one we went to is not at the time, wasn't very well known. And it was crazy to see that stuff. And you can't see the pictures on here, but you could hike to the top of the temples. And in the temples where the people would get ready to be sacrificed, they would have drawings of the same type of stuff. It was bizarre.
Well, I think that there's, and this is American Earth, you talk about kind of the gray area of history, is there's a lot of unknown. I think the Southwest and even down to Mexico and beyond, it's this gray area of history. There was, I'm going to slaughter the name of the book I read this year, but they were talking about our understanding of history, and it's not as clear cut as we'd like to believe it is.
No.
And you think of, the Grand Canyon is this revered place. The native culture in that area, they believe that was the place of the emergence, right? They were coming from I want to say the second dimension to the third dimension. I might have that wrong. But there are these sites there that are somewhat off limits, I believe, that it looks like something had actually come through the ground and pushed up through it. But, there's some cool stuff out there, man. And you could spend a lifetime researching it and seeing what's out there and not even begin to touch it, because people don't research everything. I mean, the one book that I was talking about, he was saying that he's like, scientists believe that, this is how far we're deeping, archaeologists, this is how far we're digging, and that's it. So like, they don't believe that American people have been on the American continent beyond a certain date, we'll say. And when they hit that level of digging out an area, they stop. They don't dig any deeper, because to them, there's nothing to find beyond that. But this is where, like in Clovis in California, they found the Clovis Point, arrowheads and stuff like that, kind of proving that there was a Clovis man and there was, something else going on here in the United States and in the Americas long before that, and how it's kind of interesting stuff and their understanding of the world.
The belief used to be Columbus was the first to get to the Americas, but the Vikings are now pretty much considered the first. And for years, that was faux pas kind of thinking, that if you said that in the community, you were kind of laughed at.
Well, I think you still are. I mean, this is what this guy was saying. It's America Before the Key to Earth's Lost Civilization by Graham Hitchcock, I believe. I'm sorry, Graham Hancock. And this book was phenomenal. Have you read that?
I have not read that one.
Oh, Joe, you should listen to it. You definitely get a kick out of it. It's super interesting. He wrote Magicians of the Gods and a couple other books that are pretty good as well. But he was talking about terraforming in the down in South America and how the jungles were created, and that this, by all intents and purposes, the Amazon shouldn't be this biodiverse area. It was actually, the soil was created, and there's writings that show that these prehistoric people were creating soil so that they could grow plants and then bring these animals in. Very interesting stuff, and I don't know really too much in the eyes of what the scientific world thinks of that theory, but it's something to kind of pause and think about, because there's a lot we don't know.
Well, I know with the Viking thing, back when I was in elementary school, that's when you started first hearing these rumblings of that. And I know for a fact since then, that's became a much more considered, a mainstream view, that they were here first up in, was it Hudson Bay, I think? Up in Canada. Yeah. They landed. Maybe not as far as Hudson Bay,
No,
But
they did, but there's this rock in Rhode Island, actually, right by
yeah,
where we grew up,
is it
and
Massachusetts or Rhode Island?
so it was Nova Scotia, and so there was obviously
Yes, that's
settlements in
it. Yes.
Greenland, Nova Scotia, and then they found
Yep.
actual like remnants of huts and stuff like that, all up and down, and then actually they started finding these rocks with
So
holes in them. Yeah,
that rock, once they proved that rock was real, it disappeared in the middle of the
it's
night.
gone.
Somebody came and took it. It's
Yeah,
gone.
it's gone. It's
Gone.
gone. What
It's
is
in
the
the
name of that?
Smithsonian, I bet you.
Well, who knows, right?
I bet you.
Wow, yeah. It was like
Because
the
it was proven
Narragansett.
by they proved it. So the big thing I follow is the story of the Jamestown settlers, the ones who disappeared. Is that the one?
No, the
Not Jamestown. Roanoke.
Roanoke, yeah.
Because it's North Carolina, and it was always rumored by where my mother's beach house is that they ended up in that area. Well, these guys have pretty much proven now that they have been. They were doing these digs back in the sounds and stuff like that, off the sounds. I forget the college down there is doing it. They actually had a special about it, and they were finding pottery from the Roanoke days at this camp. They believe that they actually went to with the Native Americans to set up, and that's where they lived. And they proved by dating and by the type of pottery it is that that's where they're at. And they found all these different artifacts. People thought they were crazy for all these years of doing it, but they found this map, and they found in the map, like, it wasn't marked on the map, but they found this spot that they knew it was like their go-to spot if something happened, and they followed that map, and that's where all this stuff was found.
I see, that's super interesting. But to jump back, so I just Wikipedia'd, right? The Narragansett runestone is what it's called up in Rhode Island.
Yes.
So it's a 2.5-ton slab of meta sandstone located in Rhode Island, United States. It is inscribed with 2 rows of symbols, which have some indicated resembled ancient runic characters. The stone was stolen in 2012. On April 26, 2013, the Rhode Island Attorney General announced that the rock was recovered after an individual came forward with information. The rock was moved to the University of Rhode Island School of Oceanography for testing, but tests were not carried out because it would have required damaging the stone. In January 2014, plans were announced to move the runestone to Goddard Memorial State Park in East Greenwich. In October 2015, the runestone was placed for a long-term public viewing in Wickford, a village north of North Kingston, Rhode Island. So they were able to recover it, but that's interesting that it had come out. I believe it was stolen pretty much the season after America Unearthed talked about it, and then he talked about it and was like, it's gone.
American Unearthed did a whole big special about it. I mean, for somebody to steal that stone, though, like the amount of work that had to go into it is
and somebody had to see it. Yeah, you would had to have gotten a digger out there and a barge.
Oh, dude, a huge backhoe. I mean, it was in the water. I mean, and they said it weighed tons and tons.
2.5-ton slab. Like let that sink in. That is a massive piece of rock.
And it wasn't just like it was just on the land. It wasn't like it was just on somebody's property. It was in the ocean.
Yeah. Was that you or me?
I think it was me. I have random alarms that sometimes go off, and I have no idea why they go off.
Oh, it's all good.
So I wanted to show you this.
Yeah.
I'll give you a quick plug, guys. If you're ever on Tackle Warehouse, this is just fishing real quick, and you're looking for a swim jig, the Tom Mansour swim jigs are absolutely incredible. And Tackle Warehouse has them, and I think they're only like $4.49. Just throw that out there because I had it in front of me because I'm putting tackle away as we're talking.
Yeah, you sent that to me, and I haven't purchased them yet because I just I lost a bunch of my striper fishing stuff. I gotta get some of those.
Amazing swim jigs, and for $4.49, a hand tied swim jig, amazing. They flat out catch fish. Okay, back to.
Well, I think that's a good place to end it, where we're just over an hour that we started recording. However, we're going to be trimming this down because we were kind of BSing the first 5 minutes while.
That's all right. I think that's what the people like. I think we flow pretty well.
Yeah,
Maybe
Joe.
next week we'll talk a little bit more fishing and outdoors.
Yeah, I want to talk about a few things.
More conspiracy theories too.
Yeah, conspiracy theories, right? And outdoor stuff. I think that these
They go
history
hand in
things.
hand.
Yeah, everything kind of goes hand in hand. And one of the things that I always try and do when I get outside is to try to explore a little bit and see things. And I've definitely seen a lot of stuff in my days. And
Well, we definitely need to try to head out and get some pictures of our secret spot that has actual Native American cave drawings that is unknown
unknown
the
to science.
academia world that we cannot share because we do
Yep.
not want the government to come in and
Seize it.
seize it and
Yeah.
say it's theirs.
Well, let's start with that next time because we can talk a little bit about how petroglyphs typically do not. The East Coast Native Americans did not typically create petroglyphs, and I think
Typically is the word.
typically it's a good word because we do have them. I mean, we have in West Orange, New Jersey, we have a thing called Turtleback Rock. So Turtleback Zoo is because of Turtleback Rock, and it's a rock that has been carved out, supposedly carved out, to look like an actual turtle shell, which is super interesting. It's not necessarily a petroglyph, but it's early art for sure. But Joe, thank you, brother, and happy Thanksgiving. And
happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We got to do this again soon. Maybe not wait a week in between. I like doing the videos, and it's a good time.
Me too, Joe. Hey, have a good one, and we'll talk later. All right?
All right, brother. I'll see you.
All right, brother. Bye.
Bye.
All right, so that was the Hacker Outdoors podcast with Joey McCormack. If you liked what you heard, please give us a rating on whatever platform you are listening to or watching this on. Please check out the show notes below for some links about the topics we discussed today. So I thank you all for listening, and I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll talk again next week. Take care.